You are not unshakable because you keep letting unexamined thoughts govern your life. Right now, your mind reacts before it reasons, and your peace rises and falls with things you cannot control. This is where Stoic discipline begins, in seeing clearly what is yours to govern and what is not, and refusing to confuse the two for even a single day. In these lessons, you will learn how to return authority to reason, how to stop treating impulse as truth, and how to live from the part of you that can remain steady in any condition. If you find value in this work, subscribe and stay with this practice so you do not return to old habits alone. Number 1. Master your judgments before chasing control beyond yourself. Right now, your life is being shaped less by what happens to you than by what you decide those things mean. That is the place where your freedom begins or ends, not in the event itself, not in the words someone said, not in the delay, not in the insult, not in the loss, not in the silence, in the judgment, in the meaning you attach, in the story you tell yourself before reason has had a chance to stand up. Most people never notice this. They live as if their suffering was caused by the world alone. It is not. The world strikes, the mind obeys. Then the body follows the mind into fear, anger, complaint, craving, and despair. This is how a person becomes weak without ever meaning to become weak. He thinks he is reacting to life. In truth, he is surrendering his rule over his own mind. You must begin here. You must learn to master your judgments before you chase control beyond yourself. Everything else hangs on this. If you cannot govern your own impressions, then you are not free. You are dragged. You are pulled by every sudden feeling. You are owned by whatever appears bright or threatening in the moment. A message arrives and your peace is lost. A plan changes and your mind collapses. Someone ignores you and you feel diminished. Someone praises you and you become inflated. This is not strength. This is bondage dressed as sensitivity. A man who is ruled by appearances is not living. He is being used by the first image that enters his mind. Look closely at what you call pain. Often it is not the event, it is the verdict you rushed to place upon it. You say this should not have happened. You say this proves something terrible about your life. You say this makes you powerless. You say this means you are disrespected or abandoned or failed. You have judged before you have understood, and then you are astonished that your mind has become a prison. But every prison begins with false judgment. Every chain begins when a person calls an impression true before testing it. The discipline here is simple and severe. When something happens, do not immediately agree with your first reaction. Stop. Hold the moment. Refuse the impulse to call it good or bad before you examine it. Ask yourself one question and do not lie in your answer. What part of this is within my control and what part is not? That question is a sword. It cuts through confusion. It cuts through self-pity. It cuts through the endless noise of the mind. Within your control are your choices, your attention, your intention, your use of reason, your willingness to do what is right. Outside your control are the opinions of others, the weather, the past, the body's full obedience, the timing of events, the behavior of other people, and the outcome that fate has not placed in your hands. When you confuse these two domains, you hand your life to what does not belong to you. That is why you feel weak. That is why you feel resentful. That is why you keep exhausting yourself on battles you cannot win. Do not confuse effort with control. You are responsible for acting well. You are not responsible for commanding the result. This is one of the hardest truths for the undisciplined mind because it wants guarantees. It wants proof in advance. It wants to know that its virtue will be rewarded immediately. It wants to believe that if it tries hard enough, life will stop resisting it. Life will not agree to this bargain. Nature does not promise comfort to the good. It promises only the chance to act well. That is enough for the trained mind. It is everything. If you make the result your master, then every day will be a trial of anxiety. If you make virtue your master, then every day becomes a field for practice. This does not mean you stop caring about outcomes. It means you stop placing your peace inside them. You still work, you still prepare, you still speak clearly, you still make careful choices, you still seek what is useful and just. But you do so without attaching your worth to what cannot be guaranteed. There is a great difference between duty and dependence. Duty says, I will do what reason demands. Dependence says, I will be calm only if life obeys me. Dependence is childish. Duty is mature. Dependence is fragile. Duty is steady. Dependence turns every inconvenience into a wound. Duty turns every inconvenience into a chance to prove the strength of your character. Most people say they want control when what they really want is immunity from discomfort. They want to avoid embarrassment. They want to avoid uncertainty. They want to avoid the chance of being wrong. They want to avoid the sting of rejection and the burden of waiting and the discipline of restraint. So they call their fear wisdom and their avoidance prudence. It is neither. A man who cannot endure being unsettled cannot be called strong. He is merely protected by favorable conditions. Remove those conditions and the truth appears. The truth is always waiting, and the truth is simple. The stronger your judgment, the less power the world has over you. Begin each day by training the mind before the day trains it for you. Wake up and do not run to your phone. Do not let the voices of others enter before your own reason has spoken. Sit in silence for a few moments and ask what sort of events may come today that are not up to you. A delay may come, an insult may come, an error may come, a demand may come, fatigue may come, temptation may come, someone may misunderstand you, someone may ignore you, the body may resist, the task may be harder than expected. Look at these things before they arrive and decide now that none of them will be allowed to steal your judgment. You do not prepare to escape them, you prepare to meet them correctly. That is the difference between discipline and fantasy. Then ask, what is up to you today? Is it not your honesty? Is it not your patience? Is it not your refusal to lie to yourself? Is it not the quality of your choices? Is it not your willingness to endure a hard truth? Is it not the restraint you can show when provoked? Is it not the fairness you can offer when wronged? Is it not the calm with which you can do necessary work without complaint? These things are yours. No one can take them unless you surrender them. And if they are yours, then why do you live as if your life depends on controlling what belongs to others? The mind resists this teaching because it thinks it is losing something. In truth, it is being relieved of a burden it was never meant to carry. You are not meant to carry the whole world. You are meant to carry your own mind in accordance with reason. That is enough work for a lifetime. To master your judgments is not a small thing. It is the foundation of courage. A person who sees clearly does not panic easily. He knows that an event is only an event until he declares it a disaster. He knows that a loss is a loss of possession, not necessarily a loss of character. He knows that a sharp word is just sound unless he grants it the right to rule his mind. He knows that praise is not truth and blame is not truth. He knows that only reason can judge what is truly good and what is truly bad, and reason says virtue alone is good because virtue alone belongs fully to you. You must therefore become suspicious of immediate emotional conclusions, not because emotions are evil, but because they are not enough. Feeling rises quickly. Reason arrives more slowly. The untrained man worships the first and ignores the second. The Stoic does the opposite. He asks whether the impression is true. He asks whether the feeling is telling him something useful or merely something loud. He asks whether his anger is protecting justice or protecting ego. He asks whether his fear is warning him against real danger or simply against discomfort. He asks whether his desire is aimed at what is honorable or only at what is easy. This questioning is not coldness, it is courage. It is the refusal to let the lower part of the self masquerade as the whole self. You will notice that much of your suffering comes from arguing with reality. You think life owes you smoother passage. You think people should behave as you prefer. You think your efforts should be met with success. You think your plans should remain intact. You think your body should always cooperate. You think your reputation should be protected from misunderstanding. This is where the mind becomes arrogant and vulnerable at once. It assumes the world exists to confirm its wishes. Then when the world refuses, it cries injustice. But reality has never signed a contract with your preferences. The only safe place is within the governance of reason. Acceptance is not surrender to laziness. Acceptance is the disciplined recognition of what is and what is not yours to alter. When you accept what cannot be changed, you stop wasting strength on resistance and begin using it where it matters. You stop cursing the rain and carry an umbrella. You stop resenting the delay and use the time well. You stop mourning the insult and inspect your own character. You stop demanding that others be different before you choose to act rightly. This is how a person becomes unshakable, not by forcing the world to agree with him, but by refusing to let the world decide the state of his soul. There is great danger in habitually rehearsing offense. Every time you take an event and inflate it into a personal tragedy, you train your mind to panic. Every time you decide that one setback means ruin, you weaken your judgment. Every time you tell yourself that one person's opinion defines you, you abandon your own authority. You cannot remain free while feeding your mind stories that make you small. Watch your inner speech. The words you repeat in private become the laws you live under in public. If you say "this always happens to me," you make yourself a victim. If you say "I cannot bear this," you make yourself weaker than you are. If you say "I must have this" or "I cannot be happy," you build your misery in advance. But if you say "this is difficult and I can meet it well," then you give reason a place to stand. This is not mere positive talk. It is a moral discipline. You are not trying to trick yourself into comfort. You are training yourself to speak accurately. Accuracy is strength. Delusion is weakness. To say that an event is difficult is true. To say that it destroys your capacity for virtue is false. To say that a person has wounded your pride may be true. To say that your peace must now be lost is false. To say that the body hurts may be true. To say that this therefore ruins your character is false. Every false conclusion drains strength from the mind. Every true conclusion returns strength to it. So do not be careless with your judgments. They are not harmless. They shape your life. When a hardship arrives, do not ask first, "Why me?" Ask, "What is required of me?" That question changes everything. "Why me?" is a complaint that looks for exemption. "What is required of me?" is a question that seeks duty. One weakens the soul, the other strengthens it. One asks the universe to justify itself, the other asks the mind to rise to its task. There is no dignity in demanding a life without difficulty. There is dignity in becoming equal to whatever comes. This is the work of inner mastery, not to abolish storms, but to become a pilot who knows how to handle the vessel. Practice this in small things, because small things reveal the mind. Someone cuts in line and you feel the rise of irritation. Someone sends a rude message and your chest tightens. A task takes longer than expected and you feel impatience. A plan changes and frustration appears. These are not trivial moments. They are the daily battlefield where judgment is either strengthened or surrendered. In those moments, pause. Do not answer at once. Do not text at once. Do not complain at once. Do not form a story at once. Breathe. Name the event plainly. This happened. Then separate the fact from your opinion about it. Then ask whether this touches your character or only your convenience. Then choose the response that reason would approve, even if your feelings protest. If you do this often enough, you will begin to see something important. Much of what you call urgency is only impulsiveness. Much of what you call injustice is only disappointment. Much of what you call unbearable is only unfamiliar. The mind makes a tyrant out of whatever it has not trained itself to endure. But when you repeatedly meet discomfort without surrendering to it, the same event loses its power to dominate you. This is how resilience is built, not through slogans, through repetition, through the refusal to be ruled by every passing impression. You may ask how a person can keep doing this when life keeps pressing in from all sides. The answer is that you do not need to win the entire war today. You need only govern the present impression. That is the whole field, not the past, not the future, not every possible scenario. Only the judgment before you now. This moment is sufficient for practice. In this moment you can choose not to exaggerate. In this moment you can choose not to panic. In this moment you can choose not to blame. In this moment you can choose to act with patience and fairness. This is how a disciplined life is built, one moment at a time, one judgment at a time, one correction at a time. You will fail sometimes. Of course you will. A mind that has spent years living by impulse does not become clear in one day. But failure is not the end unless you use it as an excuse to stop. When you notice that you have accepted a false judgment, do not indulge guilt. Correct it. Return to reason. Say to yourself, I was hasty. I was offended too quickly. I gave weight to what did not deserve it. I will not repeat that mistake if I can avoid it. This is not weakness. This is self-command. The shameful thing is not that the mind strays. The shameful thing is when it refuses to be brought back. The person who masters judgments begins to become harder to manipulate. He is not easily baited by praise. He is not easily broken by criticism. He does not live for applause and does not collapse under disapproval. He knows that reputation belongs to the crowd while character belongs to him. He knows that approval is unstable because crowds are unstable. He knows that if he depends on admiration, he has turned his soul over to strangers, so he values something better. He values the clear verdict of his own reason after honest examination. This quiet authority is far stronger than public applause. It cannot be given by others and therefore cannot be taken by them. You must also learn to distrust the mind's habit of making everything about you. Not every remark is a declaration against you. Not every delay is a personal attack. Not every mistake is a sign that you are doomed. Not every silence is rejection. Not every difficulty is punishment. The world is larger than your private drama. Many events happen for reasons that have nothing to do with your worth. If you keep interpreting everything as a verdict on your identity, you will never know peace. You will be forever defending a self that exists mainly in imagination. Let the false self die. Let the anxious self die. Let the self that demands constant reassurance die. In its place, build the self that says, I know what is mine to govern and I will govern it. This is not passive, it is active and severe. To master judgment is to take responsibility for the first movement of the soul. That first movement determines the rest. If you train yourself to interrupt the chain at the beginning, you spare yourself much misery later. When the first angry thought appears, do not feed it. When the first anxious image appears, do not magnify it. When the first desire for escape appears, do not obey it. Notice the impression, test it, determine whether it is true, determine whether it is useful, determine whether it helps virtue or harms it, then act or refrain according to reason. This is freedom, not the freedom to do as the body wishes, but the freedom to remain aligned with what is good. Remember that virtue is not a mood. It is a choice repeated under pressure. It is justice when you are mistreated. It is courage when you are afraid. It is moderation when you crave excess. It is wisdom when your emotions urge haste. When you master judgments, you create the space in which virtue can operate. Without that space, you are reaction. With that space, you become a human being in the fullest sense, a being able to choose the better course even when it is costly, a being able to remain just even when no one is watching, a being able to remain calm even when the crowd is loud, a being able to say no to an impulse and yes to a principle. This is why the practice must continue every day. Morning, midday, evening. In the morning, prepare for what is not up to you and commit yourself to reason. During the day, catch the false judgments as they arise. At night, review where you were weak and where you were strong. Ask where you rushed. Ask where you exaggerated. Ask where you surrendered your peace. Ask where you acted well despite discomfort. Do not perform this review to punish yourself. Perform it to sharpen yourself. The self-examined honestly becomes more governable. The self-ignored becomes chaotic. There is no middle ground for long. Either you are training your judgments or your judgments are training you. You may find that one of the hardest judgments to master is the judgment about other people. It is easy to think you have been unfairly singled out. It is easy to think others are foolish while you are clear. It is easy to think the world would improve if everyone simply saw things your way. Resist that arrogance. It is poison. Other people act from their own judgments just as you do. Some are confused, some are selfish, some are fearful, some are careless, some are still sleeping. This should not surprise you. Human beings are often ruled by error. The question is not whether others are flawed. The question is whether you will let their flaws corrupt yours. Do not lower your character because someone else has lowered theirs. Do not reply to disorder with disorder. Do not let another person's lack of reason take reason from you. There is dignity in quiet strength. There is dignity in a mind that does not lunge after every impulse. There is dignity in a person who can remain centered while facing uncertainty. But this dignity is earned. It is not a gift. It comes through repeated acts of self-restraint. It comes when you refuse to turn every inconvenience into an injury. It comes when you stop seeking to control the weather of the world and begin governing the climate of your own mind. It comes when you stop asking life for permission to be noble. You do not need permission, you need practice. So today when something unsettles you, do not say, "I cannot deal with this." Say, "This is the material from which strength is made." When someone disappoints you, do not say, "I knew it would be like this." Say, "Their action is outside my control and my response is not." When you feel fear, do not obey it instantly, inspect it. When you feel anger, do not celebrate it as righteousness, inspect it. When you feel envy, do not disguise it, inspect it. The untrained soul is full of hidden confusions. The trained soul brings them into the light and denies them authority unless reason approves them. You do not need a perfect life to become unshakable. You need a disciplined mind. You do not need favorable conditions to practice Stoicism. You need only the next judgment. That is enough. In this very moment, the work is before you. Will you believe the first thought that wounds you, or will you test it? Will you demand that life submit to your preferences, or will you submit your preferences to reason? Will you act like a person who needs the world to cooperate before he can be virtuous, or will you act like a person who knows virtue is possible in any condition? This is the choice. This is always the choice, and do not postpone it. The mind loves delay because delay protects weakness. It says, "Tomorrow I will be calm. Tomorrow I will control myself. Tomorrow I will think more clearly. Tomorrow I will stop reacting." Tomorrow is the favorite shelter of the undisciplined. But life is not waiting for your permission to end. The days are leaving now. Your character is being formed now. Every judgment you make now is either a brick in the house of your freedom or a crack in its foundation. You are not promised another chance to become more rational. You are not promised another chance to become less enslaved by impulse. You have this day, use it. When you leave this moment, do not go back to sleep inside your own habits. Watch your mind with the seriousness a soldier gives to his post. Be alert to the first false movement. Be suspicious of self-justifying stories. Be quick to return to what is up to you. Be calm in the face of what is not. Speak less when emotion is high. Think more before you call anything a disaster. Treat your judgments as things that can be corrected because they can. Treat your peace as something that must be earned through reason because it must. Treat your life as a school of discipline because that is what it is. If you do this, you will begin to notice a profound change. The same world will still contain delay and loss and difficulty and noise, but it will no longer control your inner state the way it once did. You will still feel pressure. You will still meet resistance. You will still be tested. Yet inside there will be a steadier voice. A voice that says, this belongs to fate. This belongs to others. This belongs to the body. This belongs to the moment, but my judgment belongs to me. My choice belongs to me. My integrity belongs to me. My duty belongs to me. And because these things belong to me, I need not be broken. That is the beginning of an unshakable life. Not the absence of trouble, the mastery of judgment, not the control of everything, the control of the one thing that is truly yours, not the hope that the world will be gentle. The certainty that you can remain just and reasonable even when it is not. Hold to that. Return to it when you drift. Build your days around it, and stop waiting for a better world before you become a better ruler of yourself. The time for that is now. Number 2. Accept each moment with reason instead of bitter resistance. There is a quiet habit that steals more peace from your life than anger, failure, or misfortune ever could. It is the habit of arguing with reality. You may not notice yourself doing it because it rarely announces itself with loud words. It often appears as a silent complaint inside the mind. It says, this should not be happening. This is unfair. My day would be better if other people behaved differently. My life could finally begin if this obstacle disappeared. Every time you accept those thoughts without examining them, you place yourself in conflict with something that has already happened. The event has already arrived. The present moment already exists. Yet your mind refuses to stand where your body already stands. You are living in one reality while demanding another. That division becomes the beginning of unnecessary suffering. Reason does not ask you to enjoy every difficulty. It asks something far more demanding. It asks you to see each moment as it truly is before deciding how to respond. The disciplined mind does not waste its strength wishing that the present were different. It asks a better question. Given that this is now reality, what is the most honorable action available to me? This single change transforms the way a person lives. Instead of measuring every moment against personal preference, you begin measuring every response against character. One question disappears. Why is this happening to me? Another question replaces it. How can I meet this well? Notice how much of your day is spent resisting small events. A slow line at the store, unexpected traffic, a delayed reply, a mistake at work, someone speaking harshly, a plan changing without your approval. None of these events asks for your anger. None demands bitterness. They simply appear. Yet the undisciplined mind immediately declares them enemies. Resistance often feels justified because it disguises itself as intelligence. You tell yourself that your frustration proves you care. You tell yourself your complaint is merely honesty. But honesty does not require resentment. You can acknowledge difficulty without surrendering your peace. Acceptance is frequently misunderstood. Many imagine that accepting reality means becoming passive or indifferent. Nothing could be further from disciplined living. Acceptance concerns facts, Action concerns choices. You accept the fact before deciding upon the choice. Refusing to admit reality only delays wise action. Imagine receiving criticism that feels unfair. The first impulse is to defend yourself before understanding what has actually been said. Pause instead. Let the words exist without immediately making them a judgment upon your worth. Ask whether there is any truth that can improve your character. If there is, welcome it. If there is not, allow it to pass without inviting it into your inner life. Either way, your peace remains under your own guardianship. This discipline applies equally to success. Pleasant moments deserve the same careful judgment as painful ones. Praise can tempt you toward pride just as criticism tempts you toward resentment. Wealth can invite attachment just as poverty can invite despair. The mind must remain steady in both directions. The goal is not emotional emptiness. The goal is freedom from becoming the servant of changing circumstances. Begin tomorrow with a simple practice before the demands of the day begin speaking louder than reason. Sit quietly for several minutes. Remind yourself that the coming hours will contain events beyond your choosing. Some will please you, others will challenge you. Resolve in advance that neither category will determine your character. Only your choices will. As you move through the day, create space between each event and each response. Even a single calm breath interrupts the habit of automatic reaction. In that brief pause, ask yourself whether you are resisting reality or responding to it wisely. This question gradually retrains the mind. What once felt impossible becomes natural through repetition. The evening offers another opportunity for discipline. Before sleep, review the day without excuses and without harshness. Remember where you resisted what could not be changed. Remember where irritation controlled your words. Remember where reason quietly guided your actions despite discomfort. Learn from both. The purpose is improvement rather than self-condemnation. Many people spend years trying to arrange perfect conditions before they believe they can live peacefully. They wait for the ideal job, the ideal relationship, the ideal health, or the ideal circumstances. Yet each new condition brings fresh uncertainty because external life never stops changing. Lasting steadiness cannot be built upon moving ground. Your true work is not to negotiate with fate until it satisfies every preference. Your work is to develop a mind that remains governed by reason regardless of what arrives. Every unwelcome moment becomes an opportunity to practice patience. Every delay becomes an opportunity to practice composure. Every disappointment becomes an opportunity to strengthen self-command. The person who accepts each moment with reason does not become weaker. Such a person becomes increasingly difficult to disturb because peace is no longer borrowed from favorable circumstances. It is built from disciplined judgment repeated day after day. Reality will continue unfolding according to causes larger than your wishes. People will continue acting according to their own understanding. Fortune will continue changing without asking permission. None of this prevents you from living well. What prevents you is believing that your happiness depends upon controlling what was never yours to command. The next difficult moment you encounter will present the same choice it always has. You may argue with reality and lose your peace, or you may accept the moment completely and devote your strength to the only task that truly belongs to you, choosing the next action with wisdom, justice, courage, and self-restraint. Every unshakable life begins with that decision, renewed one present moment at a time. Number 3. Govern your thoughts before they govern your actions daily. Before you speak a single word today, your mind has already spoken thousands to itself. Before your hands begin their work, your thoughts have already pointed them in a direction. Before your character becomes visible through action, it has already been shaped in silence. This is why the greatest struggle is rarely found in what people see. It begins in the hidden place where every decision is first imagined. Many people believe they are governed by circumstances. They point toward difficult conversations, unexpected setbacks, demanding work, or the behavior of others as the source of their restless lives. Yet look more carefully. Between every event and every action stands a thought. That thought may last only a moment, but within it lies the difference between discipline and impulse, between wisdom and regret. The mind that remains unexamined quietly becomes its own ruler. It repeats old assumptions without asking whether they deserve trust. It accepts passing impressions as permanent truths. It builds habits from conclusions that were never tested. Day after day, these unnoticed thoughts harden into character, and eventually a person begins calling fate what is often the result of years spent neglecting the government of the inner life. Your greatest responsibility is not to eliminate every unwanted thought. Such a task belongs neither to reason nor to nature. Thoughts will appear without invitation. Memories will return. Desires will rise. Fears will announce themselves. Images of success and failure will enter the mind just as clouds pass across the sky. Their arrival is not the measure of your character. The authority you grant them is. This distinction changes everything. If every passing thought immediately became your command, no one could live wisely for even a single day. The disciplined person therefore refuses to confuse appearance with obligation. A thought says, "You have been insulted." Reason asks, "Has your character truly been harmed?" A thought says, "You will certainly fail." Reason asks, "What evidence supports such certainty?" A thought says, "Respond immediately." Reason replies, "Only after careful examination." This quiet examination is one of the highest expressions of self-command. It slows the mind just enough for judgment to replace impulse. Without this pause, every emotion becomes an order. Anger demands retaliation. Fear demands retreat. Desire demands indulgence. Pride demands recognition. Envy demands comparison. Yet none of these deserves obedience merely because it speaks loudly. Notice how often unnecessary suffering begins with imagination rather than reality. A meeting has not yet occurred, but the mind rehearses humiliation. A conversation has not yet taken place, but resentment has already been constructed. A future challenge has not yet arrived, yet exhaustion is experienced in advance. Much of what burdens the soul has never existed outside thought itself. Reason calls you back to what is present. It asks you to work with facts rather than predictions. It invites you to distinguish between what is known and what is merely feared. This discipline prevents the imagination from becoming a tyrant. It restores the mind to solid ground where action becomes possible. Begin tomorrow before the demands of the day compete for your attention. Sit quietly for a few minutes without distraction. Watch your thoughts arrive naturally. Do not chase them away, but do not immediately believe them either. Simply observe which themes appear most often. Perhaps you discover recurring worry. Perhaps you notice resentment. Perhaps you find endless comparison or the constant search for approval. You are not observing these patterns to condemn yourself. You are identifying the places where greater discipline is required. Carry this awareness into ordinary moments. While waiting in traffic, standing in line, reading an unexpected message, or hearing criticism, practice noticing the first thought instead of instantly becoming it. There is tremendous freedom in recognizing that awareness and agreement are not the same thing. You can witness an impulse without surrendering your conduct to it. Throughout the day, ask a quiet question whenever your emotions begin to accelerate. Does this thought deserve my trust? This question protects the mind from becoming the servant of every passing impression. Some thoughts deserve careful attention because they point toward justice, honesty, courage, or moderation. Others deserve only recognition before being released because they arise from habit rather than reason. Another useful discipline is to examine every complaint before allowing it to shape your mood. Complaints often disguise themselves as objective descriptions while secretly expressing resistance towards circumstances outside your authority. When you notice yourself complaining, stop and ask whether the situation truly prevents you from acting with integrity. If the answer is no, then your character remains fully available to you. Do not expect immediate perfection from this practice. A lifetime of careless thinking cannot be transformed in a single afternoon. Yet every thoughtful interruption weakens the old habit. Every deliberate response strengthens the new one. Character is formed through repeated acts of governance over the inner life. The evening offers another opportunity for honest training. Before sleep, revisit the day without self-praise and without unnecessary shame. Recall the moments when thought outran wisdom. Recall the conversations where emotion narrowed your judgment. Recall the occasions when patience quietly prevailed despite difficulty. Treat each memory as instruction rather than accusation. Tomorrow becomes stronger when today is examined truthfully. Gradually, you will notice that the outer events of life have changed very little. People still disagree, plans still fail, delays still occur, the body still grows tired, fortune still shifts without warning. Yet something essential has changed. Your thoughts no longer rush forward without inspection. They are welcomed before being weighed. They are heard before being accepted. They no longer govern you merely because they appeared first. This is the beginning of genuine freedom. Not freedom from challenge, but freedom from automatic obedience to every impulse that enters the mind. A governed mind produces governed actions. Governed actions produce trustworthy character. Trustworthy character produces a life that remains steady even when circumstances refuse to cooperate. Every morning presents the same quiet responsibility. Before your thoughts become your words, before your words become your habits, and before your habits become your destiny, choose to place reason where impulse once ruled. The person who learns this discipline discovers that lasting strength has never depended upon controlling the world outside. It has always depended upon governing the unseen world within. Number 4. Choose virtue above comfort in every difficult decision today. There is a question that quietly stands behind every important decision you make, whether you notice it or not. Will you choose what is right, or will you choose what feels easier? Your answer to that question shapes your character long before it shapes your circumstances. Every day offers countless opportunities to strengthen your integrity or slowly trade it away for temporary relief. Comfort has a persuasive voice because it rarely announces itself as a threat. It presents itself as a reasonable compromise. It encourages you to postpone difficult conversations, avoid necessary responsibilities, ignore uncomfortable truths, and remain silent when honesty would require courage. It tells you that one small exception will not matter. Yet character is not weakened by a single dramatic collapse. More often it is worn away through repeated decisions that place convenience above principle. The disciplined life begins by rejecting the belief that comfort is life's highest aim. Comfort may accompany a good life from time to time, but it cannot define one. A person who measures every choice according to immediate ease gradually loses the ability to endure necessary hardship. When discomfort becomes the enemy, wisdom soon follows it out the door. Virtue asks a different question. Instead of asking what feels pleasant, it asks what is worthy of a rational human being. Instead of asking what protects your image, it asks what preserves your integrity. Instead of asking what produces quick rewards, it asks what allows you to remain honest with yourself when the day is finished. Look honestly at your recent decisions. Perhaps you remained silent because speaking truth carried risk. Perhaps you delayed work because temporary pleasure demanded attention first. Perhaps you defended an obvious mistake because admitting it threatened your pride. In each case, the difficulty was not created by circumstances alone. The struggle arose because comfort was allowed to compete with character. No one becomes steadfast without repeatedly choosing principle over preference. Every difficult decision becomes training for the next one. Every honest action strengthens your confidence that your conduct does not depend upon favorable conditions. This confidence cannot be purchased or borrowed. It is earned through repeated acts of self-government. There will be moments when fairness costs you recognition. There will be moments when patience requires enduring misunderstanding. There will be occasions when restraint feels heavier than retaliation. At such times, the mind naturally searches for easier alternatives. Yet remember what is truly being tested. The world is not examining your possessions, your reputation, or your status. It is revealing the condition of your character. Many people fear discomfort because they believe it signals failure. The disciplined mind understands something different. Difficulty often marks the very place where virtue has the opportunity to become visible. Courage has no meaning without fear. Moderation has no meaning without temptation. Justice has no meaning unless another path promises greater personal advantage. Wisdom itself appears whenever reason quietly refuses to surrender to impulse. This understanding changes the purpose of adversity. Challenges are no longer interruptions to the good life. They become opportunities to practice it. Every demanding circumstance asks a single question: will you remain faithful to reason even when comfort invites surrender? Begin preparing before these moments arrive. Each morning, remind yourself that the day will contain choices between convenience and principle. You may face impatience, distraction, praise, criticism, uncertainty, or fatigue. Resolve beforehand that none of these conditions will determine your conduct. Your responsibility is not to control what appears before you. Your responsibility is to meet each situation with integrity. As the day unfolds, create a habit of pausing before important decisions. Do not ask what feels easiest. Ask what reflects honesty, justice, moderation, and courage. This brief examination gradually retrains the mind. Decisions once governed by appetite begin serving reason instead. Some choices appear insignificant, yet they quietly shape the entire direction of a life. Returning borrowed property when no one would notice its absence, completing work thoroughly when shortcuts remain hidden, speaking respectfully to someone unable to benefit your ambitions, admitting uncertainty rather than pretending to possess knowledge you lack. These actions rarely attract admiration, but they steadily strengthen the person performing them. Do not expect virtue to provide immediate comfort. Often it asks you to sacrifice present ease for lasting stability of character. There may be disappointment. There may be inconvenience. There may even be temporary loss. Yet none of these diminishes the value of acting rightly. What truly harms you is knowingly abandoning integrity for temporary advantage. The desire for approval frequently competes with virtue. Many people alter their conduct to satisfy changing opinions. They remain silent when conscience urges speech. They imitate behavior they privately reject. They seek acceptance by abandoning principles that once guided them. Such approval is unstable because it depends upon the preferences of others. Character grounded in reason remains steady regardless of changing audiences. Pay careful attention to excuses disguised as wisdom. The mind possesses remarkable skill in defending its own weakness. It says the situation is exceptional. It says everyone behaves this way. It says one compromise will prevent greater problems. Examine each excuse carefully. Ask whether it protects integrity or merely protects comfort. This single habit exposes many forms of self-deception before they become permanent patterns. The disciplined person also accepts that acting rightly does not guarantee immediate success. Honest work may still encounter failure. Fair treatment may not receive gratitude. Courage may not remove uncertainty. Virtue was never valuable because it guaranteed favorable outcomes. It is valuable because it remains entirely within your authority. Whatever fortune decides, your character remains available for your own guidance. At the end of each day, review your decisions with honesty rather than harshness. Recall moments when comfort quietly directed your actions. Notice where fear of inconvenience influenced your judgment. Also remember where integrity prevailed despite difficulty. Let these observations become instruction rather than accusation. Every truthful examination prepares tomorrow's decisions. Over time, something remarkable begins to happen. The difficult choice no longer feels unfamiliar. Integrity becomes increasingly natural because it has been practiced repeatedly. Temporary comfort loses much of its influence because you have witnessed how quickly it disappears. Inner stability grows because it rests upon something that cannot be taken away by changing circumstances. This does not mean temptation vanishes. The disciplined life is not the absence of struggle. It is the presence of clear judgment within struggle. The invitation to choose convenience will continue appearing in countless forms. Your strength lies not in avoiding these moments, but in recognizing them before they quietly shape your conduct. Remember that no external achievement can compensate for neglected character. Wealth cannot repair dishonesty. Recognition cannot replace self-respect. Success cannot erase choices made against conscience. A person may gain many things while slowly losing the ability to trust their own judgment. That exchange is never worthwhile. Every sunrise offers another opportunity to strengthen what truly belongs to you. Not your possessions, not your reputation, not your circumstances. Your capacity to choose wisely remains yours in every condition. That capacity becomes stronger each time reason quietly overrules impulse. When today's difficult decision arrives, welcome it as a chance to practice rather than a burden to escape. Let it remind you that character is not formed through comfort, but through faithful action under pressure. Allow integrity to become more valuable than convenience, and let each honorable choice build the steady foundation of a life that no changing fortune can easily disturb. Every decision made according to reason becomes another lasting stone in that foundation, and with each passing day you become less dependent upon comfort and more devoted to the enduring work of living with wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. Number 5. Release every opinion that weakens your inner peace completely. There is a burden you carry every day that was never placed upon your shoulders by the world. You placed it there yourself, often without noticing. It is not made of circumstances, nor of other people, nor of fortune. It is made of opinions that have never been carefully examined. They travel with you into every conversation, every disappointment, every ambition, and every quiet moment when your thoughts begin speaking louder than reality. Many people believe that peace disappears because life becomes difficult. A disciplined mind recognizes something more demanding. Peace is often surrendered long before difficulty arrives. It is surrendered the moment an untested opinion is accepted as unquestionable truth. From that moment onward, every event is interpreted through a judgment that may have no foundation beyond habit. Consider how easily the mind creates conclusions. A stranger speaks abruptly, and you decide you have been disrespected. A plan changes unexpectedly, and you conclude that the entire day has been ruined. Someone receives recognition before you, and your thoughts declare that your own efforts have lost their value. None of these judgments belongs to the event itself. They are additions supplied by the mind, and once accepted they begin directing emotion, speech, and conduct. The disciplined life therefore begins with careful examination rather than immediate agreement. Every opinion that enters your mind deserves inspection before it deserves loyalty. The mere appearance of a thought does not establish its truth. Thoughts arrive for many reasons. Some arise from memory. Others emerge from fear, desire, pride, or long-established habits. Reason alone determines whether they deserve to remain. This practice demands patience because the mind naturally prefers speed. It wishes to pronounce judgment before understanding. It wishes to label events before observing them fully. Yet haste often mistakes appearance for reality. A thoughtful pause prevents countless unnecessary disturbances before they gain strength. There are opinions that quietly poison the inner life while pretending to offer protection. One insists that your worth depends upon constant approval. Another claims that every setback diminishes your future. Another whispers that people must behave according to your expectations before you can remain calm. Each of these beliefs places your peace into hands that do not belong to you. Anything entrusted entirely to changing circumstances can never become stable. Instead, cultivate opinions that remain faithful to reason. Believe that your character is more important than your reputation. Believe that every challenge presents an opportunity to exercise wisdom, justice, courage, or moderation. Believe that external events cannot force dishonesty upon you unless you willingly cooperate. These convictions strengthen rather than weaken the governing part of the mind because they remain within your authority regardless of changing fortune. Notice how resentment often survives only because an opinion continues feeding it. The memory itself gradually fades, yet the repeated judgment keeps restoring fresh anger. You tell yourself the offense should never have happened. You rehearse conversations that no longer exist. You demand repayment from a past that cannot answer. Meanwhile, the present moment quietly passes unused. Release does not require forgetting what occurred. It requires refusing to nourish judgments that prolong unnecessary suffering. You may remember the event clearly while declining to renew bitterness each time it returns to memory. This discipline preserves dignity without surrendering your peace. The same principle applies to anxiety. Much anxiety grows from opinions about futures that have not yet arrived. The mind invents certainty where none exists. It predicts failure before effort has begun. It imagines rejection before speaking honestly. It assumes disaster because uncertainty feels uncomfortable. These predictions consume strength needed for present responsibility. Reason invites you back to facts. Ask yourself what actually exists in this moment. Separate observation from imagination. Distinguish genuine preparation from endless speculation. Your responsibility belongs to today's conduct, not tomorrow's imagined difficulties. Each morning, begin with a brief examination of your expectations. Identify any belief that depends entirely upon circumstances beyond your direction. Perhaps you expect every conversation to proceed smoothly. Perhaps you expect immediate recognition for your efforts. Perhaps you expect the day to unfold exactly according to your plans. Replace these expectations with commitments rooted in your own character. Resolve to remain truthful even if misunderstood. Resolve to remain patient even if delayed. Resolve to remain fair even if treated unfairly. These commitments strengthen the only territory that genuinely belongs to you. Throughout the day, whenever emotional disturbance begins to grow, ask a simple question. Which opinion is creating this disturbance? Do not stop at describing the event. Search for the judgment beneath it. You may discover that disappointment rests upon entitlement, anger rests upon wounded pride, fear rests upon imagined certainty about the future. Once the opinion becomes visible, reason gains the opportunity to examine it. The evening offers another valuable discipline. Before sleep, review not merely your actions but the opinions that produced them. Which beliefs guided your speech today? Which assumptions encouraged impatience? Which judgments allowed greater self-command? By examining causes instead of merely consequences, you gradually reshape the foundation from which tomorrow's actions will arise. Do not expect every harmful opinion to disappear quickly. Some have been repeated for years until they feel inseparable from your identity. Yet repetition created them, and disciplined repetition can weaken them. Every time reason refuses agreement with a false judgment, that judgment loses a little of its authority. Every time you choose clearer thinking, the mind becomes more reliable. Eventually you begin noticing a remarkable change. Circumstances continue changing exactly as before. Praise still comes and goes. Difficulties still appear without invitation. Other people continue acting according to their own understanding. Yet your peace no longer rises and falls with every passing event, because it is no longer attached to opinions that distort reality. Inner steadiness is not created by controlling fortune. It is created by refusing to grant false judgments permanent residence within the mind. Every opinion worthy of your trust should make you more truthful, more just, more courageous, or more moderate. Any opinion that repeatedly weakens these qualities deserves to be released without hesitation. When the next disturbance arrives, resist the urge to blame the world immediately. Look inward first. Search carefully for the judgment asking for your agreement. Place that judgment before reason with complete honesty. If it strengthens character, keep it. If it weakens character, let it go without regret. A life governed in this way grows steadily quieter, not because reality becomes easier, but because the mind becomes unwilling to surrender its peace to opinions that never deserved its loyalty. Number 6. Endure every hardship with calm, unwavering, disciplined resolve, always. Hardship has a way of revealing truths that comfort often keeps hidden. When life becomes difficult, excuses lose their strength, appearances become less important, and the condition of your character is placed in full view. Many people spend years believing they possess patience, courage, and self-command, only to discover that these qualities disappear the moment circumstances become demanding. This discovery should not discourage you, it should awaken you. The purpose of difficulty is not to prove that you are incapable, it is to show you exactly where your discipline must grow. The first mistake the undisciplined mind makes is treating hardship as evidence that something has gone wrong. It quietly assumes that a good life should unfold without resistance. From that belief comes frustration, resentment, and endless complaint. Yet no rational person expects a tree to grow without weather or a body to become stronger without effort. Why then should character mature without challenge? Hardship is not an interruption of the disciplined life, it is one of its essential conditions. The greatest danger during adversity is not the obstacle itself, but the conclusions you begin forming because of it. A setback whispers that your efforts are meaningless. A disappointment suggests that integrity has brought you nothing. A period of uncertainty tempts you to abandon patience in exchange for panic. None of these conclusions deserves immediate acceptance. Every hardship introduces not only an external challenge, but also an internal examination. Your task is to meet both with careful judgment. When something difficult enters your life, resist the urge to ask how quickly it will disappear. Instead, ask how you can conduct yourself honorably while it remains. This question redirects your attention from circumstances you cannot command toward character that always remains available to you. The duration of hardship belongs to fortune. The quality of your response belongs to you. Many people believe endurance means suppressing emotion until nothing is felt. This is neither realistic nor wise. Endurance is the steady refusal to allow temporary emotion to dictate permanent conduct. Fear may arise, yet courage still chooses its duty. Sadness may visit, yet justice continues guiding behavior. Fatigue may appear, yet moderation prevents surrender to destructive habits. The presence of difficulty does not remove your ability to choose well. Calmness is often misunderstood as the absence of feeling. In reality, calmness is the presence of clear judgment despite feeling. The disciplined person does not wait for emotions to disappear before acting wisely. Instead, reason quietly assumes leadership, while emotion gradually finds its proper place. This order protects the mind from becoming the servant of every changing mood. Notice how hardship often narrows attention until all you can see is immediate discomfort. The mind begins believing that today's burden defines your entire future. It mistakes one chapter for the whole story. Yet reason restores proportion. It reminds you that every difficult period eventually changes, while the habits developed during that period often remain for years. The obstacle may leave. The character you build while facing it can remain with you for the rest of your life. Each morning, prepare yourself honestly. Do not demand an easy day before agreeing to act with integrity. Expect that some events will resist your plans. Expect misunderstanding, delay, inconvenience, and uncertainty. This preparation is not pessimism. It prevents surprise from becoming distress. When difficulty arrives, you recognize it as part of the human condition rather than a personal injustice. As the day unfolds, guard yourself against hidden forms of complaint. Complaint does not always appear in spoken words. It often exists silently through constant mental resistance. You repeatedly rehearse how life should have unfolded differently. You compare reality with personal preference until dissatisfaction becomes your constant companion. Every such comparison weakens resolve because it directs attention toward what cannot be altered instead of what can still be done well. Replace complaint with purposeful action. Ask yourself what responsibility remains available despite present conditions. Even when many opportunities disappear, one opportunity never leaves. You can still act with honesty. You can still practice patience. You can still refuse bitterness. You can still speak truthfully. You can still govern your conduct according to reason. These possibilities remain untouched by changing fortune. There will be days when progress seems invisible. Continue anyway. Character grows quietly before it becomes visible. Just as roots develop beneath the ground long before branches expand toward the sky, disciplined habits strengthen beneath ordinary choices long before others notice them. Trust the process of repeated right action rather than immediate results. Do not compare your hardship with someone else's comfort. Such comparisons produce either envy or pride, neither of which improves character. Every person encounters different circumstances. Your task is not to evaluate another person's path, but to govern your own with consistency. The quality of your discipline depends upon your choices, not upon the appearance of someone else's life. Learn to distinguish between pain and unnecessary suffering. Physical exhaustion after honest work may be unavoidable. Grief after genuine loss belongs to human nature. Uncertainty accompanies many worthwhile pursuits. Yet resentment, self-pity, and constant outrage often arise from judgments added after the original difficulty. By examining these judgments carefully, you remove burdens that never belonged to the hardship itself. During demanding moments, shorten your attention to the present responsibility. The mind becomes overwhelmed when it attempts to carry every possible future at once. Instead, ask what faithful action belongs to this hour alone. Complete that responsibility with care, then move to the next one. A difficult season becomes manageable when divided into honorable actions performed one at a time. There is also value in practicing voluntary simplicity from time to time. Occasionally choose the less comfortable path when no necessity requires it. Eat a plain meal without complaint. Walk instead of seeking constant convenience. Spend time without unnecessary distraction. These small disciplines remind the mind that comfort is welcome, but never required for contentment. When unavoidable hardship later appears, it feels less unfamiliar because you have already practiced living without constant ease. The evening offers another opportunity for strengthening resolve. Before sleep, review not only the events of the day but the quality of your endurance. Where did irritation quietly replace patience? Where did fear influence your decisions? Where did you remain faithful to reason despite pressure? Do not perform this examination to condemn yourself. Perform it because improvement requires honest observation. Gradually you will discover that hardship loses much of its power to frighten you, not because life becomes predictable, but because your confidence shifts away from external conditions and toward disciplined character. You begin trusting your ability to respond wisely even when outcomes remain uncertain. This confidence cannot be granted by success alone. It is earned through repeated encounters with difficulty handled honorably. Never mistake stubbornness for disciplined resolve. Stubbornness refuses correction because pride demands certainty. Disciplined resolve remains firmly committed to what is right while remaining humble enough to learn. Reason listens carefully, accepts truth wherever it appears, and willingly changes mistaken judgments. Such flexibility strengthens rather than weakens character because it serves wisdom instead of ego. The world may continue presenting challenges beyond your choosing. Plans may fail despite careful preparation. Other people may disappoint you despite your fairness toward them. Circumstances may remain uncertain longer than you expected. None of these events possesses authority over your integrity unless you willingly surrender it. Your deepest freedom remains untouched whenever reason continues governing your conduct. When the next hardship arrives, greet it neither with despair nor with false confidence. Meet it with quiet readiness. Remind yourself that difficulty cannot decide your character. Only your choices possess that authority. Stand firmly within what belongs to you. Govern your judgments carefully. Perform today's responsibilities faithfully. Leave tomorrow's uncertainties where they belong. Over time, this steady practice transforms your relationship with adversity. You no longer seek suffering, yet neither do you fear it as you once did. You recognize each challenge as another opportunity to strengthen the qualities that no changing circumstance can remove. Calm becomes steadier because it rests upon reason rather than comfort. Resolve becomes stronger because it has been tested instead of merely imagined. Day after day, your character grows less dependent upon favorable fortune and more firmly rooted in the enduring work of living wisely, acting justly, showing courage under pressure, and exercising moderation in every condition life presents. Number 7. Examine your character before criticizing another human being again. One of the easiest habits to develop is also one of the most destructive. It is the habit of measuring the faults of others with great precision, while overlooking the condition of your own character. The mind finds this task strangely satisfying because it demands very little courage. Looking outward requires no confession. Looking inward requires complete honesty. Every time you become preoccupied with another person's shortcomings, ask yourself a difficult question. What useful work have I postponed within myself while concentrating on someone else's failures? This question is uncomfortable because it removes every distraction. It directs your attention toward the only place where genuine improvement is possible. The desire to criticize often disguises itself as concern for truth. Sometimes correction is necessary. Justice requires that wrong actions be recognized. Wisdom requires that harmful choices be understood clearly. Yet there is a profound difference between correcting with reason and criticizing from wounded pride. One seeks improvement. The other seeks superiority. Observe your own mind when someone disappoints you. Notice how quickly it begins constructing a complete story about that person's character. One mistake becomes proof of permanent incompetence. One harsh word becomes evidence of lasting malice. One disagreement becomes a reason to dismiss everything they have ever done well. Such judgments rarely arise from careful examination. They arise from emotion demanding certainty before reason has completed its work. The disciplined mind refuses this haste. It remembers that every human being acts according to their present understanding. Some understand clearly, others remain confused. Many alternate between wisdom and error within the same day. You know this because the same struggle exists within your own life. If you expect patience for your own imperfections, justice requires extending that possibility to others as well. This does not mean approving harmful conduct. It means separating the action from the impulse to condemn the entire person. You may reject dishonesty without surrendering your own fairness. You may oppose injustice without allowing hatred to govern your thoughts. Character is protected when correction remains guided by reason instead of resentment. Many conflicts continue far longer than necessary because each person believes self-examination belongs only to the other. Both wait for someone else to admit fault. Both collect evidence supporting their own innocence. Meanwhile, neither asks the only question capable of restoring wisdom: where have I failed to govern myself? This question demands genuine courage because the answer may not flatter you. Perhaps your words were technically correct but delivered without kindness. Perhaps your silence allowed misunderstanding to grow. Perhaps your pride prevented an apology that would have restored peace. Perhaps your assumptions became stronger than your observations. Honest examination rarely leaves the conscience completely untouched. Your first responsibility is therefore not managing another person's character. Your first responsibility is governing your own. No amount of criticism improves someone else if your own conduct remains careless. Influence begins with example before it ever reaches instruction. People may reject your advice, but they cannot ignore consistent integrity. Each morning, remind yourself that you will encounter imperfect people because you yourself remain imperfect. This expectation prevents surprise from becoming irritation. Instead of demanding flawless conduct from everyone you meet, prepare yourself to respond wisely when ordinary human weakness appears. Such preparation strengthens patience before it is tested. During the day, notice how often conversation invites unnecessary judgment. Gossip offers temporary pleasure because it creates the illusion of moral superiority without requiring personal improvement. Resist this temptation. Every moment spent rehearsing another person's failures is a moment unavailable for strengthening your own character. Replace criticism with observation. Instead of immediately deciding what another person's actions reveal about them, ask what your response should reveal about you. This simple shift transforms many difficult encounters. The focus moves from controlling another life toward governing your own conduct with greater consistency. There will be times when correction cannot be avoided. Someone under your responsibility may require honest guidance. A harmful action may need to be addressed directly. Even then, examine your motives carefully before speaking. Ask whether your words arise from a sincere desire to help or from a hidden desire to wound. The difference may not be obvious until you examine yourself honestly. Reason speaks calmly because it seeks understanding rather than victory. Pride speaks loudly because it fears being overlooked. If you discover anger directing your speech, postpone unnecessary words until judgment becomes clearer. Silence governed by wisdom often accomplishes more than immediate reaction governed by emotion. Another valuable practice is remembering your own history. Think of mistakes you once defended with complete confidence. Recall opinions you later abandoned after gaining greater understanding. Remember moments when another person's patience allowed you to improve rather than become discouraged. These memories cultivate humility. They remind you that growth belongs to every human being willing to examine themselves honestly. Humility does not require thinking less of yourself. It requires thinking more accurately about yourself. You possess strengths worthy of gratitude and weaknesses deserving continued attention. Both realities exist together. Ignoring either one leads away from wisdom. Honest self-knowledge protects against both arrogance and unnecessary self-condemnation. Whenever another person's conduct disturbs your peace, pause before responding. Ask what remains within your authority. You cannot choose another person's judgments, habits, or priorities. You can choose whether irritation becomes your guide. You can choose whether justice or resentment shapes your next action. This distinction preserves freedom where many people unknowingly surrender it. At the end of each day, review your conversations as carefully as your actions. Did you listen with genuine attention or merely wait for your opportunity to respond? Did you interpret another person's words fairly before forming conclusions? Did your criticism improve the situation or simply express frustration? Did you overlook faults in yourself that you immediately noticed in others? These questions gradually refine both judgment and character. Over time, you will notice a remarkable change. Other people's imperfections lose much of their power to disturb you because your attention has returned to its proper work. Instead of carrying the impossible burden of correcting every flaw you observe, you devote your strength to the only life entrusted entirely to your care. This discipline also transforms relationships. People become less like opponents and more like fellow travelers struggling with many of the same weaknesses you continue working to overcome. Compassion grows naturally when you remember how often patience has been necessary for your own improvement. Justice becomes steadier because it no longer depends upon emotional preference. Do not mistake this perspective for weakness. Holding yourself accountable before judging others requires greater strength than finding fault from a distance. It demands daily honesty, repeated self-correction, and the willingness to admit error without damaging your commitment to continued growth. Few people choose this path because it offers no quick satisfaction, yet it offers something far more valuable than temporary superiority. It offers lasting integrity. When tomorrow brings another opportunity to criticize, delay your judgment for a moment. Turn your attention inward first. Ask whether your own thoughts remain governed by reason. Ask whether your speech reflects justice. Ask whether your actions deserve the same careful examination you wish to apply to someone else. If correction is still necessary after this honest review, offer it with fairness rather than contempt. If correction is unnecessary, return your attention to the lifelong work of governing your own character. That work alone remains fully within your care, and no achievement deserves greater devotion than becoming a person whose conduct consistently reflects wisdom, courage, moderation, and justice. Number 8. Serve others through justice without expecting praise or reward. Much of what people call service is quietly shaped by expectation. They act, help, speak, or give. But beneath those actions sits a hidden demand for recognition. When praise does not arrive, they feel slighted. When gratitude is delayed, they feel forgotten. When their effort is not noticed, they begin to question whether the effort was worth it at all. This is how an act that could have strengthened character becomes dependent on the judgment of others. You must look directly at this tendency within yourself. It is not enough to believe you are generous or fair. You must examine what your mind expects in return for your actions. If approval is required for you to remain at peace, then your service is not truly free. It is conditional, and anything conditional on external response cannot belong fully to you. Justice is not a performance. It is not a strategy for reputation. It is a way of acting that respects what is right, regardless of who observes it. To serve others through justice means to give each person what reason determines is appropriate in that moment. Sometimes this is honesty. Sometimes it is patience. Sometimes it is restraint. Sometimes it is action that benefits them even when it costs you comfort. The mind resists this because it wants to measure its worth through visibility. It prefers actions that are seen, acknowledged, and returned with gratitude. Yet this preference quietly weakens character. A person who depends on external approval for internal stability becomes vulnerable to every shift in attention. The absence of praise becomes interpreted as failure, even when the action itself was correct. You must learn to separate the value of the act from the reaction it receives. An action guided by reason is complete the moment it is performed correctly. The response of others belongs to conditions outside your authority. If you confuse these two, you place your peace in something unstable. If you keep them separate, you preserve your freedom. Look at how often disappointment, after helping someone, does not come from the act itself, but from the expectation that it should have produced gratitude. The mind quietly says they should have appreciated this more. That single word should becomes the source of disturbance. Reality has already occurred. The expectation adds an invisible burden that did not exist in the action itself. Before you act, examine your intention carefully. Ask whether you are moving toward justice or toward recognition. If recognition is present as a need, it does not need to be suppressed or denied. It simply needs to be seen clearly so that it does not quietly govern your behavior. Awareness restores control. Unseen motives govern the mind. Seen motives can be guided by reason. When you serve others without expectation, you are not lowering your worth. You are restoring your independence. You are no longer waiting for external confirmation to determine whether your actions were correct. The standard becomes internal clarity rather than external reaction. Did I act with fairness? Did I act with honesty? Did I act with appropriate restraint or courage? These questions remain under your authority regardless of how others respond. There will be moments when your actions are misunderstood. There will be moments when kindness is ignored or misinterpreted. There will be moments when fairness is met with indifference. These moments test whether your commitment is to outcome or to principle. If outcome governs you, disappointment will follow every lack of recognition. If principle governs you, steadiness remains even when outcomes are uneven. Begin each morning by reminding yourself that you will encounter opportunities to serve without reward. Some will be small and unnoticed. Others may require greater effort with no guarantee of acknowledgement. Decide in advance that recognition will not be the measure of success. Let reason define success before events have a chance to distort your judgment. Throughout the day, observe your reactions after helping others. Notice if irritation appears when appreciation is absent. Do not suppress the reaction. Study it. Ask what expectation was silently attached to the action. Once the expectation is revealed, it loses its authority. What remains is the act itself, which either aligned with justice or did not. Justice does not require applause to be complete. It requires alignment with what is appropriate for each situation. Giving too much for the sake of admiration is not justice. Giving too little out of resentment is also not justice. Both arise when the mind shifts focus from what is right to how it will be received. You are not responsible for how others interpret your actions. You are responsible for ensuring that your actions are guided by reason rather than by the desire for validation. This distinction frees you from unnecessary emotional dependence on external response. It also strengthens your ability to act consistently even when appreciation is uncertain. When disappointment arises after serving someone, do not immediately label it as injustice. Examine it carefully. Ask whether the action itself was correct, or whether the discomfort comes from unmet expectation. Most often, suffering is not produced by the act of service, but by the imagined reward that did not arrive. As you continue this practice, you will begin to notice a subtle shift. Actions become simpler, They no longer carry the weight of anticipated recognition. You begin to act because it is appropriate, not because it will be noticed. This simplicity reduces internal tension and increases steadiness of mind. At the end of the day, review your actions not through the lens of appreciation received, but through the clarity of intention. Where did you act from reason? Where did you act from desire for approval? Where did justice guide your behavior? And where did expectation interfere? This reflection strengthens awareness without turning into self-criticism. Over time, something important begins to change. The need for recognition loses its influence. You still appreciate gratitude when it appears, but you no longer depend on it to validate your actions. Service becomes lighter because it is no longer tied to emotional return. Justice becomes clearer because it is no longer mixed with expectation. A life guided in this way becomes more stable, not because others change their behavior, but because your inner dependence on their response weakens. You act well because it is right, not because it is rewarded. You remain steady because your standard is reason, not attention. In this steadiness, service becomes more honest. You are no longer performing goodness, you are practicing it. And what is practiced without expectation gradually becomes part of your character rather than part of your image. That is where real strength begins, in actions that remain correct, whether they are seen or unseen, praised or ignored, rewarded or not. Number 9. Remember death daily, then waste no precious moment again. Time is the quiet truth that most people refuse to face directly. They move through days as if the supply of moments will always continue, as if attention can be postponed without consequence, as if life is something that will eventually begin at a more suitable point in the future. Yet nothing in nature guarantees delay. Every moment already given is already complete, and every moment that has not arrived is not under your control. Between these two facts lies the entire weight of human urgency that is so often ignored. When you forget the reality of death, you begin to treat your time as if it has no limit. You delay what requires attention. You postpone what demands honesty. You waste energy on distractions that would lose all importance if seen clearly. The mind becomes careless not because it lacks intelligence, but because it refuses to remember the boundary that defines every life. To remember death is not to live in fear, it is to see life with clarity. Fear distorts because it imagines threat without understanding proportion. Clarity restores proportion because it sees that every action occurs within a limited span that cannot be extended by desire or negotiation. Once this is understood, the value of each moment increases naturally, not through pressure but through recognition. Look at how much of your day is consumed by matters that will not matter in the long arc of your life. Minor irritations are allowed to dominate attention. Small delays are treated as personal offenses. Temporary discomfort is treated as if it were permanent. These reactions do not come from reality itself. They come from forgetting how brief the opportunity to respond actually is. The disciplined mind does not wait for danger to remind it of urgency. It trains itself to recognize that urgency already exists within ordinary life. Every conversation is temporary. Every opportunity to act rightly exists only once in the exact form it appears. No repetition will return it in the same way again. This understanding removes the illusion that there will always be another chance under identical conditions. Begin each morning by acknowledging this simple fact. You do not know how many days remain, yet you know exactly how this day begins. That is enough information to act wisely. Instead of assuming endless time, assume that today carries real weight. Not because it is heavy with anxiety, but because it is the only space in which your choices can exist. As the day unfolds, notice how easily attention drifts into trivial concerns. The mind often behaves as if it has unlimited time to correct its direction. It revisits the past with regret or rehearses the future with unnecessary anticipation. Both movements steal energy from the present responsibility that is actually available. Death removes the illusion that such wandering has unlimited cost. Every wasted moment is not just lost time, it is lost opportunity to live according to reason while it is still possible. This awareness should not paralyze you. It should refine your focus. When you recognize that each moment is unrepeatable, you become more careful with how it is used. Speech becomes more intentional. Attention becomes more disciplined. Decisions become less reactive. The mind begins to treat time not as something that stretches endlessly, but as something that requires respect. Many people avoid this awareness because they associate it with sadness. Yet sadness is not the natural result of remembering mortality. Wastefulness is the real source of regret. A life lived without attention eventually produces the very heaviness people try to avoid thinking about. Clarity prevents that accumulation by encouraging right action while it is still possible to act. You must also examine how often complaints arise from forgetting the limited nature of time. When you complain, you are often assuming that circumstances should already be different than they are. You are measuring reality against an imagined version of how it should unfold. This comparison consumes the present moment without improving it. Awareness of death dissolves this habit by reminding you that there is no extra time available to live in constant resistance. Instead of complaint, return to usefulness. Ask what can be done with the moment that remains. Even in difficult conditions, there is always something within your control. You can choose your response. You can choose your judgment. You can choose whether to act with patience, honesty, courage, or restraint. These choices remain available regardless of external conditions. There is a quiet discipline in refusing to waste attention. It begins with small interruptions. When distraction appears, notice it without following it. When unnecessary irritation arises, observe it before allowing it to expand. When delay occurs, use it rather than resenting it. Each of these moments becomes an opportunity to practice awareness of time rather than unconscious consumption of it. Throughout the day, it is useful to periodically ask whether your current activity deserves the time you are giving it. Not every task requires intensity, but every moment deserves awareness. The difference between mindful action and unconscious habit determines whether time is used or merely passed through without meaning. In the evening, review the day with honesty, not to judge yourself harshly, but to observe where time was aligned with reason and where it drifted into neglect. Notice moments where attention was clear and purposeful. Also notice where it was scattered without necessity. This reflection strengthens awareness for the following day. Over time, something subtle begins to shift. The sense of endless postponement weakens. The idea that life will eventually become more serious disappears. You begin to treat ordinary moments with greater respect because you understand they are not interchangeable. Each one has already passed before it can be replaced. This understanding does not require dramatic change in lifestyle. It requires a change in attention. The external world may remain largely the same, but your relationship to it becomes more deliberate. Conversations carry more presence. Work carries more focus. Rest carries more intention. Even silence becomes meaningful because it is no longer filled with unconscious distraction. Remembering death daily is not a practice of despair. It is a discipline of alignment. It aligns your awareness with reality as it is, not as the mind prefers it to be. Reality includes limitation. It includes uncertainty. It includes the absence of control over many things. But it also includes the full authority over your own judgments and actions in each present moment. When you live with this awareness, waste becomes less appealing because it is seen clearly for what it is. Not harmless delay, but departure from the only space where life is actually happening. The present moment is not preparation for life. It is life itself in its only available form. Nothing guarantees tomorrow. That fact is not meant to create fear, but to remove illusion. Once illusion is removed, attention becomes sharper. You no longer act as if time is stored elsewhere. You act as if it is being spent now, because it is. Each moment becomes an opportunity that will never be repeated in the same way again. When this truth settles deeply, urgency no longer feels forced. It becomes natural. You stop asking when you will begin living properly. You realize that beginning can only happen now, not later, not when circumstances improve, not when conditions become perfect. Only now, within the limited space that is already unfolding. A life guided by this awareness becomes more deliberate, not more anxious. It becomes more focused, not more rushed. It becomes more responsible, not more burdened. Because every action is measured against the reality that time is not an unlimited resource, but a continuous opportunity that disappears the moment it is neglected. In that recognition, wasted moments lose their justification, attention returns to what is present, and life, no longer treated as endless, begins to be lived with the seriousness and clarity it has always required. Number 10. Live each day as your highest rational self consistently. Most people divide their life into two versions of themselves. One version exists in intention, where they believe they understand what is right, what is wise, and what kind of person they should become. The other version appears in action, where impulse, distraction, and habit quietly take control. The distance between these two versions is where regret is born. The disciplined life begins when that distance is removed and thought no longer drifts away from conduct. To live as your highest rational self is not to imagine a perfect version of yourself in theory. It is to act, in each moment, from the clearest part of your mind that is capable of seeing what is right. This requires stripping away the noise of emotion when it distorts judgment, the pull of comfort when it weakens resolve, and the pressure of external opinion when it confuses direction. What remains when these influences are examined carefully is reason, and reason is always available if you are willing to pause and use it. The greatest obstacle to this way of living is not lack of knowledge. Most people already know what they should do in many situations. The obstacle is that they do not consistently govern the part of themselves that decides whether knowledge becomes action. Thoughts are understood clearly, yet actions are surrendered to impulse. Awareness exists, yet discipline is missing. This division creates a life where clarity is present but unused. Every day offers countless opportunities to either act from your highest rational capacity or to abandon it in favor of reaction. A delayed response in conversation, a moment of frustration at inconvenience, a choice between honesty and avoidance, a decision between effort and neglect. In each of these moments, your life is shaped not by external events, but by which part of you is allowed to lead. The undisciplined mind often justifies its deviation from reason by appealing to circumstance. It says this situation is too stressful to remain calm. It says this person does not deserve patience. It says this task can be avoided without consequence. It says this moment is not important enough to require integrity. Each of these justifications weakens the authority of reason by replacing it with temporary preference. To live differently, you must begin by recognizing that no situation removes your ability to choose how you respond. Circumstances may restrict options, but they do not remove the governing capacity of the mind. Even in difficulty, you retain the ability to choose honesty over deception, patience over irritation, and clarity over confusion. These choices define your character more than any external outcome ever will. Each morning should begin with a quiet recognition of what kind of being you are capable of becoming, not in an abstract or emotional sense, but in a practical one. You are capable of observing your thoughts before accepting them. You are capable of pausing before reacting. You are capable of distinguishing what is within your control from what is not. You are capable of acting according to reason even when emotion pulls in another direction. These capacities do not need to be created. They need to be used. As the day unfolds, the mind will repeatedly attempt to pull you away from this center. It will offer impatience when things move slowly. It will offer anger when expectations are disrupted. It will offer fear when uncertainty appears. It will offer distraction when focus is required. None of these impulses deserves immediate obedience. Each must first pass through examination before being allowed to influence action. The practice of living as your highest rational self begins in this small gap between impulse and response. In that space, you are no longer reacting automatically. You are choosing deliberately. Even a brief moment of awareness can shift the entire direction of an action. A reaction becomes a decision. A habit becomes a choice. A disturbance becomes an opportunity to exercise discipline. Many people believe transformation requires dramatic change in external life. In truth, it begins with repeated internal corrections. Each time you notice yourself reacting without thought and gently return to reason, you strengthen the governing part of your mind. Each time you pause before speaking and choose clarity over impulse, you reinforce self-command. These moments may appear small, but they accumulate into character. You must also learn to separate effort from outcome. Living as your highest rational self does not guarantee that events will unfold according to preference. People will still misunderstand. Plans will still fail. Conditions will still change without warning. None of this reflects failure in your conduct. The only true failure is abandoning reason in response to what cannot be controlled. When frustration appears, examine its source carefully. Often it arises not from the event itself, but from the belief that reality should have followed a different pattern. This belief creates resistance to what is already present. Reason does not waste energy arguing with what has already occurred. It directs energy toward the next appropriate action. Throughout the day, return repeatedly to the question of governance. Which part of me is leading right now? Is this response shaped by reason or by impulse? Is this decision grounded in clarity or in emotion? These questions do not require perfection. They require attention. Attention is what restores alignment when the mind begins to drift. There will be moments when you fail to act as your highest rational self. This is not unexpected. What matters is not the absence of error, but the speed and honesty with which you return to reason afterward. Self-awareness without correction is incomplete. Correction without awareness is impossible. Together they form the ongoing discipline of character. In the evening, review the day without distortion. Do not exaggerate success or collapse into self-criticism. Observe where reason was followed and where it was neglected. Look specifically at moments of reaction, avoidance, and clarity. This review is not for judgment but for training. It strengthens awareness for the next cycle of choices. Over time, something significant begins to change. The gap between knowing and doing begins to close. You stop identifying yourself as someone who understands what is right but struggles to act on it. Instead, you become someone who increasingly acts from what is right because reason has become the default authority rather than a distant ideal. External life does not become simpler, but internal division decreases. There is less conflict between intention and behavior, less regret after action, less confusion about direction. The mind becomes steadier because it is no longer constantly overruled by its own impulses. To live each day as your highest rational self is to treat reason not as a tool used occasionally, but as the governing principle of your entire life. It is the recognition that every moment offers a choice between automatic reaction and conscious action. And in that choice, repeated countless times, your character is formed. When this discipline is practiced consistently, life does not become free of difficulty. It becomes free of unnecessary inner disorder. And in that clarity, even ordinary days take on a different quality, because they are no longer lived in conflict with yourself, but in alignment with the part of you capable of seeing and choosing what is right in each present moment.